Hello and welcome to another game review. I have no idea how I managed to miss Dead Cells up to this weekend. Yes, it did come out on the 6th of August, but somehow I managed to gloss over any mention of it beforehand, which is quite strange to me now, after I saw so many of the hype videos and comments that surrounded the game before release. But being a huge fan of Metroidvania games and roguelike games, of course pushed me into playing it, and boy was I heading for a surprise. But let us go into the review slowly, before I spoil all of it here in the beginning. At the outset, nothing much is known about the lore of the game, at least not a lot. The main character is a mass of goop that got into a body and resurrected it, so I guess that the goop might be the protagonist. Or it's just the catalyst for resurrecting the main protagonist, which is the body. Or it has something to do with a huge skeleton in the background, or he might be the king of the place. I don't know, and the game isn't too keen to explain it all. And at this point I haven't finished the game yet, so I'm just guessing. But no matter who he is, the protagonist decides that it's a good idea to ignore his obvious lack of head and to go on a huge bloody quest to basically slice and dice everything up on the island he is on. Something that I have to mention before I continue is that I do love how they actually integrate the lack of the protagonist's head and his inability to communicate besides flailing around with his arms, and it can be quite funny at times, and some of the NPC reactions to it are quite interesting. So, let's continue about the aforementioned slicing and dicing. The combat in this game is quite visceral and flowing. I swear that I could feel any strike in it. The enemies don't just take it, they react to any damaging effect, which is animated so well and fluently. They make it a joy to find new ways to destroy the hordes of enemies you encounter. Bows don't just fling off of enemies, they seem more like spears when they hit, and any type of sword slashes in a big arc and leaves a huge bloody mess. Bombs have this satisfying explosion that you can almost feel every time you throw one. Overall, the combat is quite fun, and I haven't played a game like this since Hollow Knight came out. The only thing that I think people would mind is the trial and error aspect of the game. Many enemies don't take long to telegraph their attacks, so every new encounter with a monster will probably result in some damage taken. Or it might just be me being bad at games, who knows. This is in part due to this game being not just a Castlevania-like game, but also a roguelike. Every time the protagonist dies, and trust me, on the first playthrough there is a lot of dying. He's brought to the start of the game with no items that he previously acquired. But that can be changed later on by buying upgrades that let you bring over gold, upgrading health potions and so on, which makes the replayability value skyrocket. But even though random, it is still broken up into stages that have to be cleared in the same order every time. And for me it never got boring, because the more I played the game, the faster I managed to play through levels and find new ways to expedite every new try, which made me feel a bit like a speedrunner. But before I finish, I'd like to try and mention a few things I disliked about the games, of which there aren't many, either because I didn't play enough to find them yet, or it's just that good of a game. So here it goes. The randomness might be a bit of a problem to players. For me, not that much, but I still wanted to mention it. Some runs I had no problems getting through the stage without losing 1 HP, while on other runs I was swarmed by monsters that were around this gosh darn thing that gave them all a shield, and just losing half my HP and using my precious health potion. Besides that, the bosses seem a bit harder than the road that leads up to them, so the stages became trivial before I could beat the boss. Or again, this might just be me being bad at fighting them. Besides this, there aren't many other quibbles I have with the game, so think of this just as a nitpick. So, to wrap this all up, Dead Cells is a wonderful indie game, which I do highly recommend if you are a fan of Castlevania-like or roguelike games. And on top of that, it's only 20 euros, which is quite cheap for the amount of effort that went into this game and the amount of fun you might get out of it. Oh, and please do leave a like, that would help me a lot, and subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this. And as always, goodbye and thank you for listening.